I'm excited.
Everyone.
Let's go.
I'm here with Ken Benson, a professional culinary chef, also my dad and best friend.
Ooh.
We wanted to start a channel where we could share his knowledge of cooking and kitchen tips. We haven't figured out a name for the channel, but we're thinking of Pro Chef 101. I'll let my dad tell you the name and the meaning behind it.
We've been thinking for a while. It's been her idea to do this blog or video chat or whatever it is, or it's been my idea actually for years and years and years to teach people how to cook. But getting back to recently, it's been her idea to really get it up online, and we couldn't come up with a name. I've had a lot of names. I'm not going to go through them all, but so many going through, and have asked our family members to come up with names. But I came up with one because when I went to the Culinary Institute in 1969, I entered, and our book was The Professional Chef. That was our Bible. When I say Bible, I mean it was really, we had to live and breathe and work by that every day, and we just called it the Pro Chef. So it kind of got you the feeling that you're going to become a professional chef. And I thought, so a good name for this, because what I want to try to do is go through what I did for 2 years at the Culinary Institute and all the things that I learned and try to convey them. So I figured naming this the blog, or what is this called anyway?
Like a YouTube channel.
Like this YouTube channel, to name it after the book, The Pro Chef. So Pro Chef and all the basics is 101. Because what I want to do again is teach how to cook. Is it all right if I go off on this, or? Because it's been my experience for 50 years now that most people don't know how to cook. They consider themselves home cooks, but they're not. They don't know how to cook. And then cooking on TV, television chefs, they don't ever rarely do they ever teach how to.
It's just following a recipe.
They just follow a recipe, or they come up with what it is now. Today, if you watch, it's all game shows. And the game shows aren't teaching anybody how to cook. They're taking odd ingredients, trying to put them together and make something, but they don't go through the process of, from stage 1 to finished stage. And recipes are something that in my, I don't know how many years now, it's 53, 54 years of professional cooking. The amount of recipes I have written down is 0. I have never written down a recipe. I mean, I have written them down when we opened restaurants, but very rarely. I would just show my cooks how to do what I want to do and expect them to do it. And if they did it a little differently, that's a good thing. You want consistency. I always used to say, go to McDonald's. You're going to get the same burger. You want to get, if it's on the menu, you want to get it, but if it's a little different, that's okay too. But want you to learn what you're doing, how to do it, and not follow a recipe, because the other thing I always said was a recipe is paint by number. Cooking is an art. It's one of the only, if not the only, career that people love to talk to you about. You don't really like to talk to a carpenter, a plumber, a coding, a tech engineer. You don't want to talk to them. Say, what do you do? How do you do? It's not that interesting. This career is fascinating because everybody wants to talk to you about it. Everyone wants to know what you do, how you do it, how do I do this, how do I do that. And the questions that come up, I'm sad to say, are just, people don't know. They have no common sense. So I've always said that you can get by in cooking if you have basic knowledge, and if you have some inspiration or some imagination and common sense. I always say BIC, basic knowledge, inspiration or imagination, and common sense. If you don't have common sense, you may never make it, because it is an art. And I had to teach people cake decorating, ice carving, things like that. Certain people just don't have the sense, the spatial sense, or whatever sense it is to do it. Not everybody can be a good cook. But I'd like to get away from paint by number cooking.
And into the art of it.
And the art of it. That's what I'm looking to do.
Nice. Okay. Tell me a little bit about your background, like where you grew up and where you went to culinary school.
Okay, grew up in Connecticut. Very, very interesting and fascinating childhood. Grew up on an island with 100 homes, and we were involved in boating. We had a yacht club, we had a swim team. We were mostly water. Everything was involved in on the water. So I really enjoyed sailing and boating, things like that. I had 3 sisters, my mother, my grandmother, and my dad. My dad was a brilliant, almost world famous engineer. Always busy, always working, great father, but didn't really spend a lot of time one-on-one with me. I spent more time one-on-one with my older sisters, my mother, and my grandmother. So I was kind of like the 4th daughter. I cooked, I sewed, I knit. I could knit a little bit when I wasn't out playing baseball, because I love baseball or basketball. But that was, my house was a craft house. In those days, everybody did a little something, but you didn't really have that craft house like you do now. Like my daughter, she's crafty. She has her own website for crafts. She's taught herself all these different, whether it's leather making, sewing, all these different things. Cricut. She has a Cricut she uses. So she's very crafty. When I grew up, we had all the same things, not computer-wise, but all was always, my mother did paint, she painted, she made 400 Christmas cards, hand painted every year. We always cooked. My grandmother made bread every week. My first fascination was making Swedish cardamom braid with my grandmother. Unfortunately, I ate way too much of it, but I used to love to make that and watch what my mother did when she made things, and how meat turned into a braised item that got tender, or a pork dish that had a crispy skin, and so many fascinating things. To me, it just blew my mind. And when I got towards high school, everyone expected me to be college educated, go to a liberal arts college and learn something in the sciences or something, and it wasn't for me. I knew that this was going to be my career somehow. So somehow I took, because it was easy, a home ec class, and the home ec teacher at my high school in Norwalk, Connecticut, Brian McMahon High School, she said, "You're really good. You know how to cook." She let me teach the class, boys home ec. I taught them how to make rolls and things, so it was kind of cool. And then my parents were worried that I didn't want to go to college, so we had a friend in Boston that had 3 bakeries in Belmont, Massachusetts, and we knew him very well. We're very close, and so they said, we're going to send you up there after your junior year for the summer, work in the bakeries, work from midnight to 8 in the morning, see if you like baking that much. And I did that for a summer. I loved it. But when I was done, I said, it's too one-dimensional. I want more. So luckily, we lived in Norwalk, Connecticut, and in New Haven, Connecticut, where there was the Culinary Institute of America. So I applied and went there. And that was life-changing for me. It was, the school now, I've been up there a few times. It's in Hyde Park. It moved. I was the last graduating class in 1971. Another fact about that last graduating class was, up until 1971, only men could be chefs. Women were not allowed. Not exactly true, but they weren't allowed to go to the Culinary Institute, only males. I was the last all-male graduating class. But what was good for me was most of the chefs were your older European chefs, and they were hard. They were really real hard, and hard on us. Strict, very strict. It was almost like being in the army. Reason being that the European chefs had apprenticeships, which they would go in Europe. They say, "What are you going to do with your life at 14?" They say, "Well, if you're not going to go to college, we're going to put you into a trade."
Okay.
So the ones that they thought would like cooking, they'd put them right away. At 14 years old, they'd be working 80 hours a week or more. And most of these chefs, boy, they got beat up hard. They had to do everything. They had to do gardening. They had to do house cleaning. They had to do cooking, everything. Butchering, killing animals. They did everything. So you could learn a lot from these guys, a lot about life and a lot about work ethic. So I came through that, and it really kind of straightened me out, because I was getting a little crooked, as kids do when they're 17, 18. And then I came out of there and went to work in country clubs in Connecticut, which I enjoyed, learned a lot, worked for 3 different French chefs, 1 Austrian chef, and then I worked for a guy who was a manager in one of the restaurants and one of the country clubs, and he went off to be a manager at a restaurant. And he called me up, says, "You want to join me in this independent restaurant?" So I joined him there, and then he left there. It was for a chain, a small chain. Then he left there and opened his own restaurant in White Plains, New York. And he asked me if I'd like to go. I went with him. And after a year or so, he and his partner asked me to be a partner, and I became a partner, and then it went on from there. And then I went on, worked at that for many years. We got out of that partnership, and I went into executive catering in office buildings. And after that, I went on and taught at Austin Community College, culinary arts for 3 years. And we also, Katie, this is Katie, by the way. Katie helped and worked in a little restaurant we had in Austin, Texas, until my knees went bad and we had to give that up. And that's about it.
We already touched upon how you got started in the culinary industry and what you did after your culinary degree. I want to talk about if you see any differences in the culinary style of when you went to school versus chefs now.
Chef, the word chef. When I went, in 2 years, you learned everything. We touched on everything. Not so much on, it was continental cuisine. You know, they said you're going to learn continental because that's all that was really. You didn't have Indian food. Right. You didn't have in Connecticut. I had never had Mexican food. I was 20 years old. I had never had Mexican food. Never had Indian food. Never had Thai food. Chinese, yes. Italian, very big. But the term chef, we thought we knew it all. And towards the end, when we were about to graduate, the chefs all told us, really forcefully and strictly, you don't know anything. You think you learned something here? You don't know anything.
Oh boy.
You've got to go out. You've got to pay your dues. You got to work. It's like becoming a musician, like a blues man. You got to live the blues to sing the blues, right? You've got to live culinary to be a chef. A chef is many things. A chef is hundreds of things. Everything from a businessman to a personnel manager to a purchasing agent to a psychologist. Cooking is only part of what a chef does. A quick story. I was watching TV once, and there's very few chefs that I respect on TV. There was one that I still respect, very famous. This chef, still on, but very, very well known, probably one of the most popular, if not all of them. He was doing something, and it called for a pastry bag to put on a cake or maybe potatoes. I don't know what it was, but something. So he started doing it, and he was awkward. So from the side of the stage comes in one of his aides, grabs a pastry bag, some young person, and says, okay, and just did it. But you could see he struggled with it. And there's other chefs I saw on TV say, well, I don't do desserts.
But you did both.
You have to do it all. I learned it all, but you have to do it all. If I'm going to have a restaurant or be a chef, an executive chef, and I'm going to have a pastry department, or I'm going to have a pastry chef, or if it's a small restaurant, smaller, like I worked in, I make all my own desserts. I didn't buy desserts.
You have to know how to do it all.
You have to know how to do that. You have to know how, garde manger, you know how to do everything in the pantry. You have to know how to cook fish. You have to know you can't just say, oh, I do barbecue, and that's it. That's fine. You're a barbecue cook. You're not a chef in any way, shape, or form. And the other thing, which was a good thing for me and a horrible thing for me, when I graduated in 1971, there were no overtime laws in agriculture or hospitality. So they didn't have to pay time and a half. So as soon as I graduated, you go apply for a job, your schedule is automatically about 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. It's about 80 hours a week. Straight pay. $3 an hour for 80 hours a week. 80 hours a week is hard. Kitchens were hotter then.
Very hard.
Kitchens were hotter then. I never saw an air conditioner in a kitchen. They're all air conditioned now.
Yeah.
They all have these great ventilation systems. Back then,
Did people get sick?
We used to throw up sometimes. We had buckets there. One restaurant we had buckets there, and we'd throw up in it because we got so nauseous from the heat, and your face would get so beat. It was hard, but you paid your dues. You paid your dues. If you got cut, you kept working. You got burnt, you kept working. It was hard, and that stems from a lot of these European chefs, because what they went through was just as hard, if not harder.
Right.
And that's what you say. The question was what?
The difference between culinary chefs now versus when you went to school.
We had to wear a uniform. We had to wear white sleeves because you didn't want to get burnt. There's a purpose to it.
People with short
T-shirts.
sleeves.
I go into these places and you see these guys call themselves chefs and they've got a dirty old backwards baseball hat on. I just go in there and say, well, don't you have any pride? I had pride. We were taught La Torque Blanc, the white hat. It's not just to keep your hair or your sweat. It's good for sweat too, but you should have a hat and you should be proud of what you do, what you've accomplished. Yes, and I'm adamant about, if you're going to be a chef, be proud that you're a chef.
I like that. Okay, who are your culinary inspirations growing up?
I can only think of one. That was weird. I guess that's a tough question. You're not nice to me, are you? You're getting tough on me. Culinary inspirations. I mean, the Galloping Gourmet.
Okay.
Which you never heard of, right? Did I tell you about him the other day? Graham something or other. He had a cooking show. The first one, maybe Julia Childs was one.
Okay.
But Graham, he had a regular shirt on and he'd run around the kitchen making things and being crazy. He was British. Fascinating guy to follow. So that was one. But as far as inspiration, there's a chef that started maybe a year before I started school. He was hired at the CIA, and his name is Fritz Sonnerschmidt. If you have any time, look up Fritz Sonnerschmidt. He's still alive.
Wow, that's awesome.
He was the most incredible chef I'd ever seen. There was nothing he couldn't do. He was German. Obviously went through everything tough over there, but he knew everything. But he was not mean. Most of the chefs were mean. I took a lot of that on. I became mean, but he was never mean. He was always kind and gentle and conveyed everything he wanted to teach he was perfect as a teacher. But he knew everything. And he said, if you don't love what you do, stop, get out. Go do something else. Go sell shoes, he'd say, for a while. If you really love cooking, you'll come back. But if you don't like it, get out. And I never had the point where I didn't like it. I had horrible, horrible situations. Tough, physically, mentally, emotionally situations. And I'd have to go in, but you know what? I loved what I did. And one of the things I always said after, they said, what did you love most about cooking? I said, the creativity. I could go in most days, I could go into my kitchen and just go and say, well, I'm going to make soup today, 1 or 2 soups. What kind do I want to make? We had one restaurant where I was making 10 to 12 specials every night.
Wow.
10 to 12 specials, most of them classical. I say half classical, half original. I named more dishes
That's a lot.
than Carter has peanuts. I didn't keep them, I didn't write them down, but I would think of something. I'd say, it would go along with the ingredient that's in it, or for some reason, I'd put a certain name on something, and it would be creative. And it goes a lot to one of the things I wanted to teach was a la minute cooking. Rachel Ray did the 30-minute meal.
meals.
How about 30-second meals? When you're in a kitchen and you're working a saute station, you might have 12 different proteins you're working with, from scallops to veal, to liver, to brains, to sweetbreads, to all these different things. Every one of them has different sauces. So you have all the accoutrements you need to make those sauces. And then you've got 3 or 4 saute pans going at once, but none of them are going to take more than a minute or 2. Shrimp scampi. How long does they cook shrimp scampi in a saute pan? I can do it in a minute and a half.
A couple of minutes.
That's all. That's not hard. Boom, boom, boom. Some things, some veal things might take a little longer, some chicken things, but for the most part, it's fast. But that's what no one does. And the reason you do that is because you have sauces. That's one thing that I wanted to teach was, I keep saying, another one I keep saying is, what happened to sauces? we live in Florida now. My wife and I are retired, and it seems like every menu is the same. We have fish. How do you want it? You want it broiled, fried, or blackened? Broiled, fried, or blackened? Broiled, fried, or blackened? There's nothing with a sauce. How about, you have steak? Yeah, we have steak. What comes with the steak? Baked potato. Is there any sauce with it? No sauce. Chicken. What kind of chicken do you have? We have a roast chicken or a grilled chicken breast. You don't have any other chicken items? No, nothing.
That's it?
That's it. And I just said it's boring. Come up with something different. Look at some of the older cookbooks. I went through one of Escoffier's original cookbooks, and I said to myself, after reading that and going through it, I said, this man has tried everything. And he even makes notes in his cookbook. This didn't work. Nowadays, people put things together that don't work, but they're not going to say it doesn't work.
Right.
They'll say it didn't work.
Right.
You know, like say he invented beef stroganoff. He said, oh, this worked well. This went together well. Say you made beef stroganoff, and instead of putting mushrooms in it, he put artichoke hearts and anchovies or something. He'll say, it didn't work.
It didn't work.
No. Yeah.
Well, that leads me to my next question.
Am I getting too
No, it's great.
too long here?
Well, what are your favorite types of food to make?
I guess baking is first, as far as baking versus savory. Anything baking, but I like bread more than anything else. Bread is very, very complex, and it's very, very simple at the same time. But making, one of the first things I talked to Katie about doing, first things I want to do is just a simple lean dough recipe. And baking, you do have to follow formulas. Bakers don't use recipes, they use formulas.
Math.
And they use math. They use baker's math, which I hope to teach. I will. And it makes things very simple. And there are times you're going to have to follow a formula. But there's many variables. It's even like if in a pâte choux or puff pastry, not puff pastry, but cream puff dough. I don't know if anybody out there has made it before, but you can find recipes for it. But there's so many variables. If you're using milk and water, just milk, the eggs, what size are the eggs? That's why you always weigh eggs. You don't use them per egg. You weigh how much eggs. The eggs, the flour that goes into making that dough. If it's a few degrees one way or the other, you need to change things. You have to know on the fly how to do it. So you have a recipe. It's a guideline. Recipes are guidelines. I love to look at recipes. That looks interesting. I'm going to try that. But of course, I'll tweak it. Don't have to make it exactly the way this person made it. I've had people ask me a question. So they say, I'm trying to make this dish and I don't have a teaspoon of margarine. So what? Who cares? You know, it's not, if you say I'm trying to make an omelet, I don't have any eggs. Okay, you got a problem.
Right.
But if you're trying to make a fine herb omelet and you have no scallions, you're okay.
Use something else.
Use something else. And that's what you have to do. And the other thing, the questions, there's so many questions that make me crazy. One of the things that was pounded into us more than anything else is when things are done.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not going to do it here, but what the chefs would do is they ask me, Chef, when is this going to be done?
I always ask him that.
And what do I say?
When it's done.
How long does it take to cook? Till it's done!
Yep.
They would scream it at us with a knife in their hand. Till it's done! Because you can never say exactly how long anything's going to take to cook. There's so many variables.
Yep.
And a good example is turkey.
Oh,
People would call me and say, oh, hi, Ken. You know, neighbors of mine. You're a chef. I know you're a chef. I've got a 16-pound turkey, and I want to know how long it takes to cook. Okay. So I'm not going to name them all for you, but there's at least 16 different variables to cook in that turkey. And even if you told me all those variables, if it's frozen, is it room temperature, is it stuffed, is it going to be covered, not covered, or what kind of oven do you have? A convection oven? Do you have a conventional oven? There's so many variables. What is the recovery time of your oven? You know, anybody know what a recovery time is of an oven?
No.
You know how thermostats work on your house, right?
Yeah.
You set it at 70, and the house goes down to 68, it comes on, right? Ovens are the same way. So you
Okay.
set it at 350, depending on the oven, it will then go down to say, 345, 340, I don't know. Depends on the manufacturer. And then the gas will come on or the
Okay.
electricity will come on. Well, how powerful is it? How fast? The recovery time. Professional ovens, it's got to be calibrated right. Make sure 350 is 350.
Right.
We used to adjust them all the time because they'd get off.
Okay.
But if you turn your oven on at 350, and let's say it is 350, now all of a sudden you open that door, it's going to go down to 340.
Right, because the hot air comes out.
So how long does it take to get back to 350?
Right.
Does it take 30 seconds or does it take 3 minutes? Home ovens, she's got a great oven. Home ovens would generally take a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Industrial ovens are going to come back in 30 seconds
Okay.
because they have much more BTUs. So it takes much. In other words, a 350 oven that's at 350 and a regular old house versus a commercial oven. The commercial oven will cook it much faster, even though the exact same turkey, the exact same temperature, because overall with the recovery, see that's only one difference.
Faster.
And again, they're talking about stuffing. Is the stuffing ice cold?
Right.
Is the stuffing warm?
Right.
Everybody says don't put hot stuffing in a turkey. Of course you can if you're going to cook it right away. That's there's so many simple things, but it's when it's done. You never know. I cooked millions of prime ribs. I knew how long they'd take. I know they take about 2.5 hours, 3 hours, but everyone's different. They weigh a little bit differently. They're just, you don't know.
It's all different.
It's all different. And nowadays, we never had thermometers. Never.
You just touched it?
We either touched it or just knew, but what we did was, we just took a fork. I'd put a fork in it and it'd go like this.
Oh.
That's the way it was
how
taught, on your lip. And I'd put it back in and check it in. Now, the health department wouldn't like that today.
But that's
But
what
you
you
have
did.
this
Now we have a thermometer.
which is good. I would use it. You have the other probe ones that you wear in your pocket. And it's a blessing. If you're cooking a roast and you want it to be at 134 degrees or
And
something,
you can just check it quickly.
you can check it. But we didn't have that. We had to look like with the prime rib. I used to know either by the fork or I could tell how much bone was showing. You got the prime rib, there's 7 bones. There's a lot you have to learn about meat cutting too. But that meat will shrink from the bone. The tail, you know the tail, right? The tail of that meat, when it's on the bone, will shrink up as it cooks. When it's about 1 inch of bone showing, it's done.
That's done.
It's done. Rule of
That's so
thumb. You
interesting.
could be off, and this is the kind of thing that just you can be taught it, but you just still need the experience.
Right.
But if you look at it in a book, you go find a recipe book. How long do you cook a prime rib? They go da per
Yeah,
pound.
they won't tell you about
Sa
the
sa
bone.
per pound. Forget about it. Forget about it. Just throw it in the garbage. It's not going to work.
Well, what is your least type of food to make?
Ooh. Well, I don't know a whole lot of Asian. I'm pretty good at basic American Chinese because garlic,
Noodles,
soy sauce,
fried
and ginger.
rice. Yeah.
Maybe some brown sugar or whatever. And, you want to put in sesame seeds, you want to put in cashew. But that's not the real deal.
Right.
And I like cooking that, but I'm not good at it. I've never cooked really. I cook French
Okay.
because I brought up cooking French and German. But my least favorite, that's tough. And again, I don't cook a lot of different cuisines. My favorite is Italian, as far as savory food is. Italian, I love cooking German food, but nobody seems to like it, so I don't cook it very often. I like French a lot, but a lot of people don't like it. Americans don't, you don't see a lot of French restaurants out there. I haven't been there. You've been there. There's lots of French restaurants that serve French food, right? It's good, isn't it?
It's something.
And I mean, seafood, I don't like seafood. People think that's odd, but I don't like fish at all. I like cooking it to some extent. I don't love cooking it.
Is it because of the smell? It's difficult. What don't you like about it? Cleaning it?
Oh, I don't know. I really haven't done much cleaning of fish because I don't go fishing. And when I purchase fish, I'd always buy fillets.
Okay.
So I know how to fillet a fish, but I'm not really good at it. But and I've cooked lots of lobsters and shrimp like crazy. And shrimp is okay. It's fun to cook. Lobsters are fun to cook. I don't like boiled lobster. Baked lobsters are fun to cook. As far as what we used to call head fish, it's just whole fish with the head on. So fillets and things. No, I don't mind. Some are better than others. I like a firmer fish. I don't like fillet of sole, things like that are very flaky and fall apart. They're difficult because they tend to fall apart. You're trying to roll them and stuff them, and they're breaking up, and they're delicate. They're very delicate, and you can overcook them real fast, real fast. So fish is not my favorite. I would not want to work in a fish house.
Okay, so that would be your least favorite.
But I mean, I know how to do it. When I worked at the at Austin Community College, the chairman, I mean what do you call it? The chief of the department,
Department head.
no, the head of the department, their chef. She was a chef from New Orleans. Great lady. I liked her a lot. But she was teaching her class on whatever it was, just culinary items. I don't know what the course name was. And they had live lobsters on the menu. So she came to me and said, Chef Benson. I said, yeah. She said, do you know how to split lobsters? I said, yeah.
But she didn't know, but she's from New Orleans.
But she'd never left New Orleans. So they didn't have live Maine lobsters. And the other way around is I had never cooked a crawfish. I still haven't. I don't know nothing about crawfish. But she didn't know. So she said, will you come to my class and show them how to split lobsters and make them ready for baking or boiling them and then split them? I said, sure, no problem. And I just said, well, here's someone who went to cooking school in New Orleans, and she's the chair of the department and didn't know how to cook or clean a lobster. So, but we can't all know everything. But you do have to be well-rounded.
Right. Okay, my next question is, what do you think is the most underrated meal and overrated meal? The overrated is steaks, because I can cook them better at home.
I see what you mean.
And underrated would be like something that we don't cook at home, like Indian food or like Thai food.
Okay. All right. Most overrated and underrated food. You were telling me about how steak, you figure, is overrated. And I would agree with that, because steak is, you can definitely get the same quality steaks at home for about 1/4 of the price. But like I said, I would love to go out and order steak if it has sauce. Or if it was done in some different way, but it's not anymore.
Okay.
It's not anymore. So that's, but the steakhouse I'll stay away from. And as far as that's overrated, underrated, geez, I might say, as much as I love to make pizza, I might say pizza. Because I found out growing up in Connecticut and going to school in New Haven, where, by the way, the best pizza in the world is from. You have Sally's and Pepe's there and a few other places. And they make, but the thing that they do is their ovens are at least 800-900 degrees. Their pizzas take less than 2 minutes to cook. They're charred. And we can't do that at home. Ice oven's gonna go to 500 degrees, and I don't care how hot you get a stone or a metal baking pan, it's just not gonna give you that fast heat like that. So I think the underrated is going out and getting that good pizza like that.
That's a good answer.
As much as I like to do it myself.
Now, what's one thing you can't live without in your kitchen?
Well, I'd say a chef's knife.
Okay.
I hope to teach about how to use a knife, proper use of a chef knife. And 90% of all the cooking you do is with a French knife. We call it a French knife. Chef's knife, cook knife, chef's knife. And there's all different shapes and things now. We'll forget about that. The tried and true one is the standard French knife. So we will be getting into that and teaching how to use that. And it takes, when I started, we had a month, nothing but using a knife for 8 hours a day, chopping. I know how to doing this all the different cuts. We'll talk about the different cuts that you have. You don't use them much anymore because people don't make soups and things. So everybody just says, oh, I'm going to dice it. That's it. There's more than just dicing. But in order to use it so that you're safe, you don't cut yourself, and you can do it quickly, it takes practice. A lot of people, I think, that not sure, they love cooking, but they hate chopping stuff up. I love chopping stuff up because it's easy for me.
Mhm.
And if it becomes easy for you, you'll like it. So you have to learn how to use the knife. So what was that? Just half the question, or was that?
That was a question. One thing you can't live without is
11
your
frames.
knife. Okay, the last question is, what are 3 things that you would like your viewers to know about you?
Passion. Passion for my children. Passion about food. Passion about music. But be passionate. Just be passionate about what you do. I just think about people that, how do they, I don't know. I've always cooked. I haven't not had a fresh cooked meal since I was born. It was always fresh cooked food. I hear people tell these stories about how they, they just have, I don't even know what they do when they get home. I don't know what they do if they don't know how to cook. And it's not that hard. And there's a joy in it. That joy of cooking cookbook my mother used to use. There is a joy. There's a real joy.
Oh, and
in
there's
cooking.
something to be proud of after each meal you cook.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
And entertaining.
Oh yeah,
You're a
I
great
love
entertainer. You love entertaining. A lot of people don't entertain because
You gotta cook.
they don't know how to handle it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank
That's
you,
all
Chef
you
Pam.
have for now?
That's it.
Oh, well, thank you, Katie, my dear.
Thank you.
You're quite a good cook and a good producer for me. Hopefully, we'll take this off. I don't know where we're going to start. Let's talk about that real quick.
I think we should
I got
do
a
knife
question for you.
skills.
Knife skills first, and then
And
what?
then baking lean yeast dough.
Lean yeast dough. So we'll start off with knife skills, different cuts, how to use a knife.
Mm-hmm.
Be very short and sweet. And then maybe just what we'll probably do while we're doing that is make a vegetable soup real
Yeah, I was
fast.
going to say the next one which should be soups.
Well, we're not going to go into soups, so as long as we're cutting vegetables.
Yeah, we should make
We'll cut
something.
them up, we'll saute them up, and we'll learn some terms about what we're cutting up. And then after that, we decided, we talked a little bit about it. We're going to bounce around.
Yeah,
We're going to do
knife skills.
some savory, some sweet, some everything, anything and everything.
Mhm.
And hopefully, is there going to be comments on this?
Oh yeah.
All right, so hopefully we'll get some feedback.
Oh, yeah.
Anything you'd like. And if I'm going to be very honest with you, if it's you ask me, can I do something? No, I've never done it. And if you ask me to make something Thai, or I don't know anything about it. I never made Asian noodles. I don't know how to make Asian noodles. I like watching them being made, and I love eating them, but I never made them, so I can't help you out with that. But anything, anything from cake decorating.
Oh, I want to do one with cakes too.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hope to see you all later.